All right, Queens, welcome to another episode. I'm so grateful to have you here. And I have a special guest with me today. I have Melissa Hala with me, and she is an anti-diet and body image coach. She helps women just like you to heal their relationship with food and stop hating their bodies. And I actually met Melissa around 3.5 years ago now through social media. I invested in myself and signed up for one of her courses, which I learned a ton from. So without further ado, Melissa, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm truly honored and very excited to get started. So as I've just dropped on you before I pressed record, that we have 10 quick fire questions to go through. So are you ready?
I am ready.
All right. So number one, how old are you and where do you live?
30, and I am in Saskatchewan, Canada.
Nice. What's your favorite season of the year?
Ooh, I love summer.
Summer girl. I'm going with autumn.
I think it's because it's winter here like 9 months out of the year.
Oh, really? Appreciate what you don't get very often.
Exactly.
Number 3, sweet or savory?
Sweet.
Me too. And sticking with the subject of food, number 4, what's your favorite meal?
Ooh, ice cream.
Yeah,
if that's considered a meal.
Hell yeah. What flavor?
I am a birthday cake flavor.
Love it.
Yeah.
Dogs or cats?
Dogs. I have mine right beside me at my desk.
Can we see, or is he not picky upable?
Oh, she definitely likes being on camera. Oh, am I tangled up here?
It looks like a cozy bed. Where is she? Oh, yay! She wants to move. There she is.
There
She looks so peaceful. Oh, thank you for showing her to us. Okay, number 6. Tell us something that people who know you might find a little bit surprising.
Ooh, I am a WWE wrestling fan.
Yeah, that's interesting for someone who doesn't know you. How interesting.
Yes.
Cool. Number 7, finish this sentence. When I notice a negative body image thought, I
address my inner critic by her name. Her name is Catherine.
Oh.
And I tell Catherine to shut her damn mouth.
I love that. Mine's called Gertrude.
I love it.
It's so funny how we actually have named our inner critic. It makes it so much easier to separate, I think.
Yes, it kind of prevents you from going into that downward spiral when you can call her by her name.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, number 8. What's your favorite thing to do at the gym? Because I know you're a gym girl.
Ooh, I love training shoulders. That is my favorite.
Ooh, I like that. I could do with some shoulders. Not gonna lie, that's my only muscle group that I find difficult to grow for some reason. Maybe I'll have a conversation with you about that. A separate conversation. Number 9, do you believe in a higher power?
I do believe that there is something bigger. I just am not sure what.
Hell yeah. Like, I have visions too and beliefs, but we're never really going to know until we know, right? But then we can't tell anyone.
Yeah, then we can't, relay that message back and go, hey, look at this is what they look like, or whatever. This is what happens after.
Yeah, so we have that to look forward to. And last question, I'm grateful that you said yes, so grateful, but why did you say yes to coming on and sharing your wisdom today?
Oh, I definitely said yes because I feel like there's just so many weight loss podcasts out there that are promoting disordered behavior and calling it healthy lifestyle. And I do feel like this work needs to be spread way faster than the coronavirus. Like women need this work. And so I would never say no to an opportunity to just share.
Yeah, I love that. It's so true. And not to kind of, well, yes, to slate the diet industry, but at the same time, I believe most people are coming from a good place.
Mm-hmm.
What you said is so key. There's so many things nowadays that they're turning into a lifestyle, health and wellness. It's still a fucking diet.
Yep.
No matter what you call it and wrap it up in a pretty pink bow, restriction is dieting. Restriction doesn't work long term.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That is why we're here.
Exactly, Melissa. And I'd love for you to dive in to your story a little bit and share with our listeners, like what exactly you do, why you do it, and how you help people, first of all.
I would love to. So I have been an intuitive eater now for about 6 years, but it was not the case in the beginning. I was going through this stage in college where I was so overwhelmed and stressed with school that I was like going out with friends all the time, eating out. And as a result, I gained a lot of weight. And in that process, I spent every weekend researching how I could undo the damage caused over the weekend of like binging. And it was almost like every Sunday I was researching a new diet, and I was going to, be even more rigid and lose this much weight this week and really push myself at the gym. And I found myself in that cycle for a few years. And the unfortunate part is I thought, oh, I know how I'm going to get myself out of this mess. I'm going to hire a contest prep coach and prep for bikini competitions, because when I look like that girl on stage, I'm going to love my body and it's going to be so easy. And because again, I saw these girls smiling on stage. They looked amazing. I thought they were healthy. I thought that's what healthy looked like. And then I went down a rabbit hole of literally, I competed the first time and said, okay, I'm going to finish, even though this is absolute torture, but I'm never doing this again. And then a couple days before my very first show, my dad passed away in an accident, tragically. And instead of me just like dealing with the grief, as soon as I stepped off stage, I went to his funeral and then signed up for another show. And it led me into like 10 competitions back to back.
Wow.
Yeah. Ooh. And then when I came out of competing, I finally had this moment. I was in the squat rack. I was feeling weak because I was hungry and my legs were shaking and I did not want to be there. And I think I did like 2 reps, re-racked, and I literally started bawling in the squat rack. I get in the car, I call my spouse and I'm like, I can't do this anymore. And he's like, can't do what? And I'm like, I can't do this competing stuff. I just need to, exercise to take care of me. I can't keep doing this. And I literally quit cold turkey. I called my coach. I told him I was done. But then I had this identity crisis. I didn't know who I was outside of Melissa Hala, IDFA Bikini Pro, because I had wrapped up my whole identity in being that bikini competitor. I had deleted my old Facebook that had photos of what I looked like before and made a new one and just acted as if I had always been that way. And it was, I didn't know how to eat like a normal person because I had so many food fears, because there's just so many food rules around competing. I didn't know how to exercise for joy. I only knew how to exercise to enhance certain muscle groups and lose fat, basically.
Wow. What do you think? I know that you was in the squat rack and you had that moment. Do you think that was your intuition? Do you think it was your body screaming at you? Like, what do you think happened in that moment when you were just done?
It was the most bizarre experience. Like, I can remember what I was wearing that day and everything. I know who was in the gym that day because I go back to that moment often because I know that was what finally got me out of there. But I just think it was my body saying no more. I cannot do anymore. My mind had kept pushing my body over and over to just drag myself to the gym, to work out through injuries and sickness. And to deprive yourself and go to bed hungry all the time. And I had disconnected myself so much from my body so that I could be successful in that sport.
Yeah.
And it was almost like my body was like slapping me across the face and saying like, wake up, I can't do this. And I just remember like sitting in my car, and I just felt like this sinking feeling in my chest and in my gut. And I was like, I can't. The thought of going and weighing out my food or punching it into my fitness pal right now literally makes me want to like scream. And I knew like I could not do it anymore, but I did not even know what can I do outside of this. I had never heard of intuitive eating in my life. I started researching bikini competitors who went through similar issues where they had hormonal problems and they gained a bunch of weight after, and they were reclaiming their health. And that's actually how I stumbled upon these competitors that left the sport and now we're advocating for intuitive eating.
That was my next question. I was going to say, what happened next? How did you go from that moment in the car to where you are now? So let's fill that gap in. What happened?
Yeah, once I got home from work, and it was the longest day at work because my thoughts were just like, oh my God, what am I going to do now? So much anxiety that I would gain weight if I ate or trained differently. And I ended up going home and I just started Googling like the truth about competing, the dark side of competing, and finding all of these bikini competitors' blogs and stories about the things they went through as a competitor. And a few of them really started advocating and preaching about intuitive eating. And I'm like, okay, what is this? So I Googled it. I found the book. I ordered it to my library. I picked it up and I took it with me on vacation. And we're commuting for 4 hours. So I was 4 hours into this book. And I'm like, okay, I'm out of my normal environment. I'm on a holiday. Normally, I cook all my food, pack it in my little meal containers, label them by day, and take them with me on holidays. And I'm like, I'm going to take what I've learned so far and try to apply it when I'm at this place. And it was crazy. My mind was blown because I actually was able to fully enjoy myself on that holiday, and I didn't binge. Normally I would binge on a holiday because I would just kind of go into like, oh, fuck it mode, and like throw all routine out the window and eat until I was in pain or felt ill. And I'm like, no, I can have ice cream today at this cute little ice cream shop, and I can have it tomorrow too because they're open. It's going to be fine. Like, this isn't I have to get this all in now because I can't have it tomorrow. And I think if I would have tried to like do it at home, it would have been harder because I'd still be in my rigid routine. But I really used that vacation to kind of experiment with it. And like all my biggest fears and worst case scenarios didn't happen.
Wow. That is so courageous of you, because having been in that, I didn't compete, I almost competed, but having been in similar scenario to you before in regards to the petrifying fear of weight gain and not knowing how to trust yourself and how the hell do you know what to eat. I used to copy, my sister kind of really helped me out. So when we would go on holiday and I was trying this intuitive eating thing, because I tried it way back when, and then it worked for a bit, and then I hadn't sorted out my dieting mindset. So I kept like going back and forth, but I would like copy what she ate because I was like, well, I don't know how much to eat. Like, how do I trust myself? So when she took a bit, I took a bit, and I like almost copied her, what she had on her plate. So that's so courageous of you to be able to just go in and trust yourself. Like, how did you find it easy? Was it difficult?
I still spent a lot of time in my head because and to this day, I don't think I can ever turn off the calorie calculator that has been embedded in my brain from years of dieting. And so I would go, okay, well, I had breakfast at this time. This is what I had. I ate till I was full. So I should be able to have something at this time. And I'd kind of gauge my portion size, like, and eyeball it. But it was not so much like reconnecting to my body It was more so I spent a lot of time in my head for the first little while before I actually could like just listen and trust. There was definitely still like food guilt. So if I had ice cream, I'd be like, oh, okay, like I had ice cream, so I really should have a lean protein and vegetables for my next meal to like balance it out. And it did take quite a while before like the guilt wore off from eating certain foods, because I had been in that mindset for so long.
Yeah. And I've got lots of questions around that a little bit later on, but I think it's really helpful to share, not because we think it's funny, because none of this is funny, like what people go through, but I do think it, and I've had feedback from clients as well, it's really helpful when we share some of the ridiculous things we've done. So what's like one of what that we can laugh about now? What's the most ridiculous diet you've ever followed?
So besides competing, when I was competing, a coach gave me a 6-ounce chicken breast and 10 cups of broccoli.
Oh,
And that was what I had to eat all day. And I was so bloated by lunch that I looked like I was 6 months pregnant. And then to go and try and train like that, or like bend forward to deadlift, and you're that gassy, like it was horrible. And then at the time I was a massage therapist. So
oh no.
I'm that gassy. I'm locked in a small room with a client for an hour, trying to hold all of it in as I'm like pushing on their back. And I look back now and I'm like, okay, would the fact that you have sharp gas pains in your abdomen not be a sign that this is like not good for you? But I was just taking orders. And when I would ask other girls that were on my competition team about it, they'd say the same thing that my coach would say. This is just part of it, Melissa. Just trust the process.
Ugh.
And I'm like, okay, but I don't feel good. I feel sorry for anybody that has to like spend an extended amount of time with me because I smell terrible. But I continue to do that. Although I think that probably the absolute most ridiculous diet I've ever done is, I think I was like 19 and I went on Google and found the cabbage soup diet.
Oh, hell yeah. Ugh.
I made this massive pot of cabbage soup. Like I'm talking a cauldron.
Yeah.
I don't like cabbage. I lasted 2 meals and I was like, this is horrible. This tastes terrible. How could anybody follow this for like the full 7 days? And I ended up, my mom was so disappointed because I still lived at home. And she's like, why are you making all this soup? Because it was summer. Like in Canada, it's normal for us at this time of year in the fall to like make a bunch of chili and soup and freeze it. And she thought I was freezing it. I'm like, no, I'm eating this all this week. And she's like, why? You're going to have diarrhea. You're going to have this. Like, and I'm like, no, I'm stirring I'm like, no, I'm going to do this. And then I felt so stupid after 2 bowls of soup, dumping the rest of it and getting rid of it because I knew I wasn't going to eat it.
Do you know, it's so funny you've brought that up because my share was the cabbage soup diet, but ironically, me and my mum did it together because my mum was only doing what she thought was best, and you know, no blame here, but we did this together and we managed 5 days. And still to this day, Melissa, no joke, I cannot enjoy vegetable soup, not even vegetable soup, to this day, all those years later, because I am traumatized by soup.
Yes, your body stored that trauma. And now probably if you even smell vegetable soup on the stove, You're like, oh, no, I can't.
It's brilliant. And you are massively into fitness still. And you have an insane body, let's just be fair. Like, I don't like to compliment women on their body, because obviously if it can make you, it can break you, and there's more to us than our body, but your body is insane. I'm just going to say my positive judgment on that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. How have you changed your relationship to exercise since the days of bikini competing?
So when I first dove into intuitive eating, I was still training as if I was a bikini competitor. So still training glutes and hamstrings 3 times a week, not touching my quads. Like there's all these rules, because once you get to a certain level of muscularity for your category, you cannot train those areas anymore and you have to focus on other ones. So I was still doing that. And it still kept me in that like guilt and almost using the exercise as a way to compensate for the fact that I was eating more freely. And finally, I'm like, okay, I can tell that I'm still like stuck and I'm not moving forward. I literally went right from competing in bikini to calling a local powerlifting coach in our town and saying, hey, I compete in bikini, but I really like just watching your girls compete in powerlifting. They're so strong. Could we, set up a meeting? So I went from bikini to training for powerlifting. And I honestly think that powerlifting, although it's like a pretty intense sport, it really changed the way that I viewed movement, because I was no longer exercising to manipulate how my body looked. I was chasing other numbers, not scale numbers. I was trying to be stronger every day. And when you go to a powerlifting meet, there's women of all sizes and shapes there.
Yeah.
And they're incredibly strong. And it really taught me that my body is so much more than just like an ornament to look at. It's actually purposeful and it is strong. And that really did help how I viewed exercise. Now I pretty much train. I was actually managing a gym for a little while for the last year, before I decided to just coach full time. And I still train a lot like, I guess, a bikini competitor in a way. But I'm a little bit congested after hiking in the mountains, because we went from very hot to snow in a day and then back to really hot. So I knew I'd have some sinus problems, but the old Melissa would have trained through all of this. And yesterday I was like, no, today is a tea day. I am resting. This is way more productive for my body. I need to let myself heal. And I am not training today either. I'm not going to until I'm 100%. But powerlifting really taught me that this body is so much more than how it appears. And I remember asking, a lot of the powerlifters looked very fit, like they could maybe compete in bodybuilding. So I'm like asking them what their macros are, how many calories do you eat? And they're like, oh, we don't track our food. Like, and I'm like, what do you mean you don't track? Because for a while, it took me a little bit to like learn that I needed to eat a little bit more than what I was as an intuitive eater to support that performance.
Yeah.
And that also really helped how I view food in the powerlifting. And now I'm in a place where I'm dating a bodybuilder, which is very fun.
Does it trigger you at all?
It's interesting because when we first started dating, I thought, you know what, it'd be really fun for us to do a show together. Even though I've been an intuitive eater for so long, I would do just this show and then go right back to it. And we started prepping in 2019 in October together, and it was really fun. We worked out together. It was kind of like a bonding thing for us. And I was like 2 weeks away from stepping on stage. And COVID happened and they canceled our show. And it was literally the most ripped physique I'd ever brought to stage. And when I could notice myself going into like body dysmorphia and be like, nope, we're not even doing mirror checks. We're not weighing. I told my coach I'm not weighing. And she said, that's fine. The pictures are fine. And I was thankful because she's actually a dietitian. And so she isn't just like a coach that is regurgitating things. Yeah. And so she's like, no, if you're finding that you're being consumed with like the scale not moving down, we don't weigh anymore. And then they canceled the show and she wanted to reverse diet me. And I was like, no. I'm like, I've got this. I'm going to be an intuitive eater starting today now that my shows are canceled. And I went right back into intuitive eating. And it was so interesting to watch because there was that period of deprivation and all my body wanted was like lots of fruit and cereal. It's like quick carbs, like give me energy. Yeah. I need help here. And I mean, old Melissa maybe would have resisted, but I'm like, no, I'm giving my body what it needs. It needs to repair. And I went from, bikini competitor to intuitive eater again overnight. And now I'm at a point where, and he is also, where we're like, we're not competing. It's not worth it. And I think he was very rigid before we started dating. And all of a sudden, now that we live together, he has, fun cereal in the pantry. There's ice cream in the freezer. There's things like that he would never have before. And now he is not as rigid. Like we go on vacation, he enjoys, there's no guilt associated. And he's kind of learning that, outdoor activity has its place. You don't always have to be in the gym. And he's kind of learning that balance too. So we have some interesting conversations because there's still, he still believes in like good carbs, bad carbs. And I smile and he goes, I know you don't agree with me. And then he keeps talking and I listen, but I also know that he's who I was a few years ago before I found this work. And I know that he'll get there, but it's not my job to push it. He'll figure it out on his own.
Yeah. Oh, that's, again, so funny you said that because I have something very similar with my fiance Wouter. He's not bodybuilding. He's at the moment he's going for a hypertrophy, so he's in muscle gaining mode. So he does track calories and macros and all these things. And even though he knows what I do, when he looks at me when I'm eating chocolate on like a Wednesday evening or something, and he goes, I'm not going to say anything. I'm like, you don't need to say anything. I can just tell by the way you're looking at me that. And then the other day he said to me, can you explain to me like the chocolate thing, like how does it work, this allowance thing? And I've very happily shared. He listens politely, but I still don't think he gets it because he cares about my health and I care about my health. He's saying things like, but what about Alzheimer's? Because when you eat the sugar, you don't know you're going to get Alzheimer's until it's too late. And I honestly, from my heart, replied and said, I'm going to trust my body. And if my body wants this amount of chocolate, I will have it. And if, worst case scenario, I get Alzheimer's, then that's my path for this life. And
you're not even going to know that you have Alzheimer's.
Exactly. Yeah. That's what I also said to him. I said, I'm not going to know anyway. So it just comes down to trust, doesn't it?
Yes.
What your body wants.
And it is interesting because I will get the look sometimes because I'm the sweet tooth. I love sweet things. And he's more of like a salty person. If there's like pretzels or like potato chips in the pantry, I couldn't even be bothered. Same. But I love sweet things. And sometimes he'll like look at me with this longing, kind of like the way my dog looks at me when I'm eating. And I'll be like, what? And he'll go, nothing. And I can tell that he's like, there's like this longing, like he wishes he could eat that without feeling bad. And I'm like, oh, he'll get there. Like he's already made that decision that competing isn't in the cards, especially like right now, Canada's a little bit crazy. We need like vaccine passports to do.
Yeah, it's
to go to a restaurant.
Yeah, same.
Let alone compete. So we're just like, you know what? This obviously isn't our path. Mm-hmm. And so I know that once he gets out of that sport, the guilt and things like that will slowly dissipate. But it's interesting because people are like, how do you guys coexist? You probably fight all the time. I'm like, there is no fight. I set a boundary right away. Like, you don't get to comment on my plate, just like I don't get to comment on yours. And we get along just fine.
And he has the best teacher. When he's ready, you can be the inspiration, which I'm sure you already are to him. So.
Yeah, it's usually our first day of vacation. He's pretty rigid. And he's like, how many grams of sugar do you think is in that flavor shot for that coffee?
Oh no, what a way to live. I remember that.
Yeah, like our first day we go to the coffee shop and you could get real Canadian maple syrup pumped into your coffee. And like that is an absolute treat. And so of course I was going to get that shot of that stuff because we don't have maple trees in my province. And he's like, oh, maple sounds good. I wonder how many grams of sugar is in there. And I was like, oh, I don't think it really matters. And I could see the frustration. He's like, it does matter, Melissa. And I'm like, well, I'm getting it because I want it. And so he had his shitty Americano with just a splash of almond milk, and I had my delicious latte. And I said, do you at least want to have a sip and taste it? No, no, no. Well, then for the rest of the 7 days, we went to that same coffee place and he got his Canadian maple. And but it always, that first day, I think there's a lot of anxiety because he's on a routine and he is a very routine based person.
Yeah.
After that first day, then he's able to be more free and there's like no guilt. And he isn't going and working out at the gym. We're hiking and being in nature. And he's made a few comments after coming back that I really think I want to be more, functionally fit like that, where I can hike and it's easy. And I don't really think I need to be in the gym as much as I am. And I was like, yeah, I agree. And so he's coming around, right? But it's not my job to like pave that path for him. But if he has questions, I'm here.
Yeah, I love that. And then it would also help anyone listening. When you said you set a boundary, I think that's so important because especially when we first start this work of intuitive eating and the inner work and all the things that we uncover when we take a look at ourselves internally and externally, boundaries are so helpful because we feel enough guilt ourselves. And if we have someone else's judgment as well reflected on us, it's not helpful. So if anyone listening is struggling to set boundaries, reach out to me or Melissa and we can help you with that because it's really helpful, especially at the start of your journey. I would love to move on to talk about the words anti-diet and also bring health into that, because I still remember to this day, one of my clients called me up one time and she was like, I want to eat an apple. Is this bad? Does this mean I'm going back into diet culture? And I was like, whoa, anti-diet is not anti-health. Can you speak to that?
Yes, I think social media partially has something to do with this. It's a lot of times when we think intuitive eating, we're like, oh, it's just a license to binge eat and eat whatever we want. And often intuitive eating coaches use pizza, and all they post is their pizza and their ice cream and their donut meals, but they don't post that they're also eating a salad or chicken or, a stir fry. And I mean, it's been proven that diets don't actually work. Only about 95 to 98% of people are successful in keeping their weight off after following a diet. So that means that the rest of us
98
it's
I know what you
95 to 98% of people
can't
gain their weight back.
Yeah, that's it.
And so only 2 to 5% are actually able to keep their weight off, but then you wonder what their quality of life is like if they're still able to keep it off. And so we see this pattern where we gain weight, lose it, gain it, lose it. And that actually increases your rate of diabetes and heart disease and things like that. And so while we've been taught that dieting is the path to health, we need to also keep into account that there's more than just our physical body at play when it comes to health. There's also our mental health as well. And I see this a lot with clients who are struggling with different hormonal conditions, whether it be hypothyroidism or adrenal fatigue or PCOS. They're often told to just diet harder and they're going to have to exercise more because it's just going to be harder for them. And it's often doctors that are giving this advice, which is unfortunate because they haven't taken into account the mental stress of over exercising and under eating and what that does to somebody who already is having issues with their hormones. And so while some people might think that being anti-diet means anti-health, it really is just pursuing wellness without that obsessiveness. It's more flexible. They're like guilt and shame and punishment have no place in a health and wellness journey.
Mm-mm.
And that's exactly what the diet industry is.
Yeah. And I have a client currently slightly worried about possible pre-diabetes. And again, she's done this medical assessment online. And of course, the first thing it says is lose X amount of pounds. And then it gives you all the other helpful things. So I've suggested, okay, weight loss for diabetes is not the answer. It's correlated with managing diabetes, but it's not the weight loss, it's managing blood sugar. So if you want to eat chocolate, it's adding in fats and proteins at the same time as when you eat that, so you don't have the blood sugar spike. It's not about restriction, it's about adding healthy things in and managing the blood sugar. Weight loss might be a byproduct of doing those things. But if we focus on, okay, maybe I'm pre-diabetic, I need to lose weight, that's not the answer. And I'm not a medical professional. I've done a lot of research around this work for my job and for what I do. And it really frustrates me when the medical professionals are just giving out weight loss as a cure. And it makes me so angry. That's not the answer. Health behaviors, not necessarily weight loss as the end goal, and then everything will, rainbows and butterflies and sparkles will fall from the sky. No.
Exactly. And weight loss is just a symptom.
Yes.
And I mean, if you're engaging in health related behaviors, you're going to improve your health. And I get really frustrated when medical professionals use correlation studies like, okay, well, this level of BMI is associated with these problems. Well, I'm pretty certain that every astronaut that landed on the moon ate chicken, but it doesn't mean that chicken sends you to the moon, but there is a correlation there.
Yeah.
And so anybody that's been told by a medical professional that they need to lose weight to improve their health, you can't actually tell on the outside how healthy somebody is. Mm-hmm. I mean, I had a client who she had cancer. She lost a lot of weight, lost her hair. She's in remission. She's doing great now, but people kept complimenting her weight loss. And they're like, oh my God, you look so good. What are you doing? And she's like, actually, I have cancer. I'm very sick. Wow. And so you can't really judge how the state of somebody's health. And I'm sure my sister doesn't mind, I'll use myself and my sister as an example. My sister exists in a larger body and I am in a smaller body. And in 2019, at the beginning of the year, I looked healthy, but I had a menstrual cycle for 8 months. And it was because I was going through like a lot of stress. I was ending a 10-year relationship and he was an alcoholic, and it was just being in that household had caused me such anxiety and stress that it was enough to affect my hormones. Mm-hmm. And as a result of the anxiety, I felt sick to my stomach all the time. So I couldn't eat either. So I had lost weight, and people kept complimenting, oh my God, you look so good. Are you competing again? Mm-hmm. And I didn't know how to say like, no, I actually just hate living in my house right now. Yeah. But then somebody might look at my sister who's in a larger body and assume she's more unhealthy, but she has luscious hair that just shines and it's so soft and her skin glows. And, she's a power lifter who is very freaking strong. But somebody might put us against each other and say, Melissa's the healthy one, Michelle is not. And that wasn't the case at all.
Yeah, that is such a powerful point to make. Thank you for sharing that, Melissa, because it is so true. We cannot see how healthy somebody is purely by looking at them. And also, I will go one step further and say, health is not a moral issue either. If someone does not value their health, that is okay because that's their decision. Why are we going around, oh, well, they don't care about their health? Why does it matter to us? It's their body. and their health and their life. Like I said earlier, I mean, I hope I don't get Alzheimer's, but I would rather enjoy my life the way I like to live it, eating chocolate when I want to. I love to work out. I love to lift weights. I love to run. I like to be happy and do me. If I worry about what might happen to my health in the future, I could die tomorrow anyway.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
you lost your dad at such a young age. You didn't expect that. That must have been so difficult. And we just don't know.
Yes. And I honestly think that losing him was really a catalyst to, it put things in perspective, like what's actually important. Cause I thought, my God, like if I die at 45, because he was only 45, I was like, well, I don't want people to speak at my funeral and say, oh, she was really good at following a diet. She was so disciplined. That is not what I wanted to be said at my funeral. And so every time, because I'm not going to pretend like bad body image days don't still happen. I still have them. And as soon as you have that initial bad body image day, you're like, oh, I should go on a diet. That's like the next following thought. Yeah. And I'm like, no, life is too short. I might die tomorrow. And so I think too that, you know, even with this pandemic, so many people are like not doing things because they're so afraid. And I'm like, well, what if you get hit by a bus tomorrow? Do you want to have been hiding out in your house for the last 2 years? Like, if it's meant to happen, it will happen. And that's just your path. I do believe that the universe has a master plan for all of us. And we don't have any control. We just kind of roll with it. Yeah. And there's no sense fighting it and putting it off. if that's how it's meant to be.
I totally agree. And also dieting is an attempt at control. And like you said, and I will share as well, and this is no secret, body image work doesn't make bad body image thoughts go away forever, which would be nice if that could happen. But body image work is knowing how to love yourself through it all, knowing how to reframe your thoughts so the feeling of anxiety and fear of rejection doesn't last in your body very long. But also the biggest thing for me to have to learn was bad body image thought, instantly, okay, let's fix this by going on a diet, or even planning a diet helps with your anxiety because at least you're doing something about it. But that's a harmful behavior. So how can we take care of ourselves through a bad body image thought or a bad body image day or period of our lives without resorting to harmful behavior, which is dieting? That's where the real work starts, because dieting temporarily at best cures our anxiety around body image. But there's one of your quotes that I have all these questions in order, but we've not stuck to them at all because we've gone off on amazing tangents. Here it is. This is your quote that I really wanted you to speak to. Weight loss won't fix poor body image. I so resonated with that one. So how can we, and I'm going to use the word fix in quotes because we're not broken, right? But how can we improve our body image without constantly thinking the answer is in a diet plan?
Yes. And I've experienced this myself. I obviously thought once I stood on stage and was a bikini competitor, I'd have that confidence and that radiance, and I'd be wearing just a sports bra and shorts or leggings to the gym. And that was not the case. I actually felt more insecure and more preoccupied with how my body looked, and it covered it up. And so the only time I'd actually show my body is when I had dehydrated for a photo shoot, because that's the only time I felt like worthy enough to show myself. But if I drank water, absolutely not. You were not seeing me in a swimsuit. And I had to learn this the hard way. And I watched it over and over with clients, because I used to be like a clean eating coach. Like, you were getting a meal plan. We were losing as much weight as possible. And I would watch clients lose 20, 30, 40 pounds and not feel any different. And many of them didn't even notice that they had lost this weight, because we have this idea in our mind of what that weight loss is going to feel like and what our life is going to look like. like diet culture and that marketing has told us that once we reach our ideal body weight, our life is going to be sunshine and rainbows. And it's promised us that confidence and that radiance. And it's kind of like when a car commercial is trying to sell a car, and it's an attractive man in a suit in the sports car with a beautiful, thin, blonde woman beside him. They're driving on a very scenic road that's mountainous with an ocean view, and there's no one else on the road. When the reality of getting that car is, it's a guy that looks normal, does not guarantee that you're going to get the girl. You're in bumper to bumper traffic, people are honking, and now you're in debt because you have to make payments for this car. And that's the reality, but the marketing is, this is what your life will look like. So one of the things I have my clients do is write out what they think their ideal body is going to bring them and what that's going to look like. And so I get them to get very specific. What types of clothes would you wear? What types of activities would you try? Because so many of my clients, when we first start working together, will not even take their kids to the pool to go swimming because they will not be seen in a swimsuit. They don't want to try the spin class or even go to the gym because they're embarrassed. And so they write down all these things that they're going to try once they lose weight and all the clothes that they're going to buy. And then I'm like, okay, go buy those things now. Go do those things now and start acting as if, because even once you get to this size that you think you want to be, nothing changes except for that number that you see on that piece of glass that you stand on every day.
Yeah, I can resonate so much. I won't lie that when I was lean and 9% body fat, I liked the way I looked. And looking at photos now, although I do think I was very tiny, I still like that look. I'm not going to pretend I don't. However, doing exactly what you've shared is in writing a list of what would I do when I, because of course I put the weight on multiple times and never could keep that size anyway. What would I do if I could be that size again, and all these things? And one of them was just go on holiday and put a bikini on without worrying or being anxious around what I look like. And I did that for the first time about 2.5 years ago. I didn't diet before a holiday, which was like unheard of. And I remember being in Egypt and I put a bikini on and I thought, oh my God, this is so hard. Like I'm really feeling this anxiety, this fear. And then I just thought, what would the best version of me do? What would the version of me who didn't give a shit, who loved herself unconditionally, what would she do? And I was like, well, she would just go out in a bikini and enjoy the holiday. And I acted as if I was already that person. And when no one died, when the floor didn't just completely disappear beneath me, and when I actually could have a good time without having a six pack, I was like, wait, what? My whole life, I've been fighting to either get the size I was again or stay there. No one cares anyway. I mean, someone might say, wow, your body's amazing. And then they get on with their life and worry about what they look like, because we all care about what we look like. And we're too busy thinking about ourselves to really notice anyone else. When I really put into perspective, like, what am I doing all of this for? And then I realized that I could actually be free around food, like my body for what it is without loving how it looked aesthetically, because that's okay. It's not important enough to me anymore to diet. And I can't diet anyway. My body is so against me dieting. I'm binging before I even start the diet. So
yes, it's another thing I have clients do too is I ask them, well, if you were on a deserted island where it was just you and there was no mirrors, no cell phones, no social media, what would you do? And my list, I wouldn't wear makeup.
no.
I wouldn't wear clothes either. I mean, I have to wear clothes here because I'd go to jail probably. But
we can be new this podcast.
Yes. And it's interesting because then you learn that most of the time our fear around just doing what we actually want is the fear of being judged by other people.
Yeah, it really is. And is that worth keeping ourselves small for? Is that worth dieting until we die? Because I've said this again, I've said this so many times and I'll say it again. Everyone is going to judge you either way, all the time, because that's what humans do, positively, negatively. We're going to be judged. So the only thing that really matters, I believe, is what we think about ourselves.
Exactly.
And there's a statistic that I would like to share with the listeners. I know you've read this, Melissa. It broke my heart, and I'm going to read this to put it into perspective. 91% of women are unhappy with their bodies, and only 5% of women naturally possess a body type portrayed by the media. 91% of women are unhappy with their bodies. That is heartbreaking.
It is. And it keeps us oppressed in so many ways. I mean, this work is so much deeper than just wanting to feel comfortable in the bikini. I mean, out of the Fortune 500 businesses, only, I think 6% are female CEOs. And we only get paid 70 cents to every dollar that a man gets paid, because we don't have that confidence to ask for the raise, because feeling worthy goes beyond our body.
Yeah.
And it's basically, although dieting has been marketed as caring about women's health, it really is just a way to keep women obedient and oppressed.
Yeah. Shivers. I've got cold shivers, and it's so true. It's so full of patriarchy. And what people don't realize is, like you've said, Melissa, it's not the surface level health, weight loss, even being attractive to other men or whatever. It's not even about the weight. It's keeping women preoccupied. And I'm not anti-men. I love men, by the way, but I'm just, as a feminist, I'm just sharing this. It was to keep women small, so we didn't realize how powerful we was, because they were afraid of the power that women possess, like sexual power even. Sex sells. Look at, I mean, this conversation's gone a completely different way, but it's so linked. It's very intertwined. The porn industry is probably one of the biggest industries there ever is. And that comes from sexual pleasure. And that's us women providing it to men. And all of it's intertwined. So I think the best thing we can do is learn how to love ourselves, follow our hearts, do what makes us happy. And can you give the listeners, Melissa, some tips on how they can start intuitive eating? Because some people might not even know exactly what that means. And also, how can they start to accept their bodies when at the moment they're just avoiding the mirror at all costs?
Yes. So with intuitive eating, getting really clear on what your fears are first about even letting go of dieting. I mean, one of the most common is the fear of weight gain. And if you actually look at your data from your past, you'll see that you've probably dieted, gained the weight back, dieted, gained the weight back. So you're probably already trending upwards anyway. So you're already living that deep fear by doing the diet thing. But dieting gives you that false sense that you have control over your life and your body. And it does help ease our anxiety when we're being told by somebody else what to eat and what to do.
Yeah.
And so what I did when I first started intuitive eating is I still ate a lot of the same foods that I ate as a dieter, but I stopped, doing portions, and then I'd add, a couple new things, because the idea of going full in made me very, very anxious.
Yeah.
And so I just started slowly adding in new things. And then eventually I got to the point where I got looser and looser on my grip, to the point where eventually, after breaking several food rules over and over and over again, it felt easier. So if you get clear on what your food rules are first, maybe you have rules where you're only allowed to eat this many calories a day, or you can't eat carbs after 6, or whatever your rules are. Pick the one that's going to be the easiest for you to break, and keep breaking it daily over and over until it feels neutral and you no longer feel guilt for breaking it, and then move on to the next rule. Because if I like threw you into intuitive eating all at once, you might feel really overwhelmed and retreat back to diet culture right away, because it can be a bit overwhelming when you have been dieting. Like the longer you've been dieting, the more bravery intuitive eating takes, because you've had decades possibly of being told what to do and not trusting your body. So that's what I would say for intuitive eating. For learning to love yourself, I think shooting for love when you've been in a place of self-hatred puts a lot of pressure on the person. Like you almost feel like you have to feel wonderful about your body all the time, but you can really instead aim for body neutrality instead, where you can actually be quite honest with how you feel about your body parts. I know a lot of times we almost use positivity and it can become a little bit toxic, where you're standing in the mirror, you do not like your thighs, say, and if you're standing in the mirror saying, no, I love my thighs, your brain knows you're lying.
Yeah.
So if you're just honest, like, okay, these are my thighs, I don't particularly like them, but I like my eyes. And if you're just very honest, you're like, I don't like them, but this is exactly what they are. And then you move into acceptance. And once you're in that place, it's a lot easier to go into body love. But one of the biggest things that helped my mental health when I was trying to heal my body image is to audit my social media feed. I had to unfollow every bikini competitor that I was comparing myself against. And it didn't just stop at me comparing my body to another person's body. It was, the people I went to school with that were maybe a lot more privileged than me, and they got to travel all over the world and their parents paid for it. And I was like hustling to like scrape by and pay for college. I had to unfollow those people. If you're a mom, maybe you have to unfollow the moms that seem to always have it together, and you look at their photos and go, God, like she's always doing this or that with her kids and they sit so nice for photos. What am I doing wrong? Basically, if the feed makes you feel less than, unfollow, because you're fed messages daily that your body isn't good enough and that you aren't good enough. But if you can limit how much exposure you get to that messaging, you're going to have less frequent bad body image days.
100%. Taking responsibility for what you consume in regards to food, media, podcasts, people, conversations, that has helped me hugely, because we are a product of our environment over time.
Yes.
But we have the ability to take 100% responsibility and take charge of what we surround ourselves with. It's up to us, isn't it, to help ourselves?
Exactly, because the diet industry is not going to come and save you. You've got to do it yourself. And, replacing those negative influences with positive influences who are speaking out about intuitive eating and health at every size really is key. Because with social media now, as soon as you follow one account, the algorithm picks that up and starts sending you more and more like that. So if you're always following these ripped fitness people that are telling you need to hustle 24/7, that's what you're going to see all day, every day. If you start following a few people who are preaching intuitive eating, your newsfeed is going to fill up with that messaging, which is going to be a lot more helpful.
I love my search bar on Instagram because I follow predominantly people like you and I find great things on there when I allow myself. I set myself time, because otherwise you go down the rabbit hole and then an hour later you're like, oh, I wonder why I've not replied to my emails because I'm scrolling on Instagram. But it is so true. And Melissa, before I ask you what you'd like to leave the listeners with, I would actually like to have you on again for me to ask you the questions that I planned to ask you.
I would love that. And I would also love to have you on my show as well.
I was listening to your podcast last night. I got so many golden nuggets out of it. So how can people find you? How can they work with you? And what would you like to leave the listeners with as we end this?
You can find my podcast on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you listen. And it is called More Than a Body with Melissa Hala. And then my Instagram is the Melissa Hala. And I'm sure that you'll leave that in the show notes.
Absolutely, yeah.
And one thing that I really wanted to leave the listeners with is, like, my podcast is called More Than a Body for a reason, because our bodies are literally just a vehicle or a vessel for our souls to experience life. So when you're coming from a place of, like, you really do have to exist in this vessel, hopefully until your late 90s or into your early hundreds. And so do you really want to spend a lifetime fighting that vessel that's literally housing your soul so that you can hug your loved ones, pick up your children, walk your dog, do all those things that you love so much? Really coming from a place of gratitude when you are when you're struggling with your body, listing off the things that your body does for you and how it allows you to experience life, is just going to be a lot more helpful, because you are so much more than just a body. It is just carrying you from place to place.
That's my vision for the world, to have us genuinely be in our bodies and not see it as an object to manipulate in order to feel like we need to fit in.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh my God, Melissa, it's been an absolute dream to have you on. And I cannot wait already for the next one, because you're so full of wisdom. I love the way you explain everything. I love your point of view. So thank you so much for your time and for coming on today. I really appreciate you.
Thank you so much for having me. We're definitely going to do this again.
Absolutely. And have the most amazing day. And we will speak soon. And thank you for listening, all of you listeners. Love you to bits. If you need anything, reach out to me or Melissa and share this episode. Bye-bye.